Welcome, Wargamers. Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and this is going to be a super informal video. You see, I have been online for the last couple days, and the leaks for the new Horus Heresy are coming out en masse, fast and furious. I'm actually recording this on the assumption that so many leaks have come out that Games Workshop is probably going to lift the NDA a little early, but who knows, this might be out on the 12th. But in that discussion, when there are things coming out of context or, rules being let out piecemeal, I wanted to have a discussion because this is a big shakeup, okay? If you are someone who played Horus Heresy, the change from second to third, I believe, is much greater than the change from first to second. In terms of not only how we approach army building and collecting, but also like the literal what the game is trying to represent and communicate. It's a notable design shift. That's the way to say it. And so in this video, I want to address some of the things that I've been seeing online from people who, admittedly, some folks are just out here to rage bait. Others bring up really notable concerns. And we'll try to sift through and kind of hit some stuff. So this is my good, bad, and ugly of Horus Heresy 3rd Edition. Caveat up front, I will be honest and say Games Workshop was kind enough to send me an early copy of the new box, the Saturnine set. And while I do think the models in here are exquisite, I do have criticisms about the set, its release, and all that kind of stuff. Games Workshop has never asked me to give a positive review. It's always been honest and just keep it professional. Like, I'm not trash talking the designers and their families and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about this product in detail because I've been building up these miniatures, and I have actually kind of slowed down on content because I have been absorbed in learning the new edition. Personally, shocker, I like it. On this channel, I talk about things I like and I don't talk about things I don't like. That's why I haven't done a single video on Middle-earth, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just stuff I don't like, I don't talk about it. This seems cool. I actually like the direction they went. But I needed to give the disclaimer that I was sent an early copy, both for integrity reasons and so you know that I know what I'm talking about. So let's start with the good, okay? It's easy to say very cynically that there's no reason that Games Workshop does these, 3-year-long editions. I don't like it. It makes me groan every time. I groaned last time it was for Age of Sigmar, although I will say Spearhead was a wonderful edition and worth a lot of pain. I think the new edition of Horus Heresy has done a lot to actually improve the game. The biggest one in my example is damage calculation. In the previous edition, everything was damage 1, and then if it had a wall of text in there that was like, this actually does 2 wounds for every 1, and then you had to get into the minutia of when saves happen, we got rid of all that. Now that we just have a damage stat, things move very fluidly when it comes to damaging vehicles, stuff like that. For someone who's not used to this kind of war game where it's much more in the minutia of the rules, I do think that it's much more seamless in explaining it to people. And one thing that just popped into my head, I don't even have it in my notes here, is in the actual rule book, and I haven't seen anyone mention this online even though they're spoiling the rules, at the start of most sections, especially when it comes to army rules, special rules, or the way interactions work, now there's sort of like a 1 to 2 sentence synopsis in bold that explains it in plain English. Hey, this special rule makes them better at taking saves against like their leadership or something like that. Whatever it might be. So it's plain English for you to be able to quickly peruse what rule you're looking for, and that makes a game like this much more accessible for me. That has much more to do with like the book editor and the design kind of stuff, but I wanted to point it out because that is real nice. Another thing I really like is status conditions. And a thing that comes with that are the new sort of like, I guess, soft scores when it comes to things like leadership, cool, willpower, intelligence. What I will say is, having seen the actual, like, Astartes book, okay, army to army, those stats are very different, of course. You would expect Solar Auxilia to have different stats to a Space Marine, right? But even Legion to Legion, when you get into the specific Legion troops, that's where you see a lot of that flavor, like a lot of it. You'll have Emperor's Children with their initiative modifiers, and they can also separately do bonuses to focus rolls. You'll see stuff, for example, like Dark Angels have a rule where they just cap out any negative modifier against them. And the stats kind of range wildly depending on what kind of unit it is and what they're trying to represent. all in all, with that new set of stats, which does seem cumbersome, I will admit, but that combined with the statuses that allow you to represent things like being shattered, pinned, that kind of stuff, I really like it. Suppressed, that was the word I was looking for. Me and my buddy Ned from Ineptus Astartes have been reviewing the different legions, and I do like how those new rules have been incorporated. Like, for example, looking at Night Lords, they have Fear, which is a bubble of -1 to leadership, willpower, and cool, I believe. And we were just having a lot of fun discussing the ways that that specific legion can make use of those specific stats, which is fun. It should be the point. They should exist to allow a legion to be completely unique in something. The next thing in my good list is challenges. Now, this is not everyone's cup of tea, but challenges are one of my core memories of early 40K. Like in my formative years, I actually had a game where I rolled that 6/6 on the D66 chart, had a guy in my Chaos Space Marine army elevate to Demon Prince in a challenge. It was everything I wanted it to be. I like challenges. I'm also a fool who never turns one down, even when it would probably be in my best interest tactically. Now, I'm going to do a dedicated video explaining challenges in more detail, but essentially, the best way to understand challenges in this edition is to go onto the Warhammer community, any of their social medias. They put up like a TikTok or an Instagram reel of, I think it's Lucius the Eternal and Saul Tarvitz fighting each other. And they did like this funny anime style of like, this hero, and then focus roll. It shows their weapons and has them kind of like anime clash together. That clip envisions what is happening on the board so well that I really highly recommend you watch it. It is two champions lining up. Their dudes are all behind them. Those two champions have the initiative modifiers of their weapon. They do a focus roll, which can also be modified by a lot of different things. There's gambits that were introduced, which are essentially your like rock, paper, scissors maneuver. So one guy parries, one guy thrusts, that kind of stuff. You're choosing what attack sequence you're going at your opponent with. And in the new edition, when you get to the end of a combat, so, you fought, he fought, and then you get to the end of it, you both get to choose if you want to start combat again. So this fight could be the most epic one-round thing where you just keep going at each other. And this is really when I get into what I feel like the big change of the game's design direction is. If earlier editions were this like sweeping wide shot of a battlefield where you're just taking in the immensity of all the troops and these huge vehicles, and it's the scope and the scale. This edition is more like a war movie that follows a specific like platoon or something, because you're going to be much more focused on those individual challenges that specific units are doing. I think there's a greater emphasis on infantry in this edition. I mean, like, vehicles are always going to be awesome, but the addition of Vanguard as a rule, if you're not familiar, line troops, they get victory points when they stand on objectives. Vanguard troops get more points when they kill enemy units standing on objectives, and that rule has been thrown all over the place in this edition, which means these games are going to be super bloody. So you're going to be wanting to throw your infantry into other infantry to have the challenges go off. The challenges are very significant for counting up, your combat score. So, I like the emphasis on it. They've really redone the weapons table, including, a bunch of those new stats they added, and essentially added a lot of flavor. So now customizing your Centurion or your Praetor, it feels very meaningful, because when you get into the initiative modifier and the combat score stuff and the focus roll and the gambits, those things really matter, and there's a lot of flavor in there. Okay, I've waxed on long enough. I've had a lot of fun building characters for the various legions, you can tell. And the last thing I have here for the strong good things is army building flexibility. The way army construction works, like I said, another dedicated video, but you get a prime detachment, or your core detachment, which is a Praetor, 0 to 3 command choices, and 0 to 4 troop and transports. All you really need to do is fill out the Praetor, but for every command choice you get, you can take one auxiliary detachment. You can always do allies, but that's kind of a separate thing. Some heroes give you additional detachment options, but really that's the core of it. If you see models that you like, there is almost guaranteed a way to make an army with that to work. And when I first cracked open the book and I saw that, I was like, man, this is actually going to be very restrictive in how lists work, because you're basically limiting yourself to, like 3 detachments. 4, technically, because you have your core one, your boss man, your praetor unlocks one, and you have up to 3 command choices, so it's a sum total of 4 in addition to the core detachment. But even that, I was like, well, a lot of the other detachments are like multiple versions of the same troop slot, so like how wide and varied are your lists going to be? And this is before I learned, this is again, while I'm still learning the book, that was my initial thought. And then as it became clear, like, oh no, actually there's a ton of ways to make exactly the list that you want, between the logistical benefit Prime Advantage, which allows you to put you can just inject a force org slot into any detachment. So if like the detachment is 2 troops, one of them's a prime slot, you take that and now you can throw a tank in there or something like that into that detachment. So that's already a huge flexibility. And then there's the fact that like heroes like the Centurion, his entire special rule is that he lets you take 2 detachments instead of 1. So if you had 3 of those guys, now we're talking 7, right? So it's very easy to get whatever you want. I think that's a bonus because at the price point of these miniatures, having the flexibility to take whatever you want, I think, is very important. There should be no reason for anyone's toys to sit on the wall collecting dust unless you want to, right? You went out and bought more than the game allows point limit wise or whatever. That's on you. But there shouldn't be a person who buys a set and is like, I literally cannot build an army with this. That should be pretty rare. So those are my goods here as a review. Damage being chained up, status conditions, the text in the book that gives you a synopsis of the area, challenges, and army flexibility. Let's move into the bad. I despise new editions because there is a whole new wave of books to buy. All the Libers and stuff like that. What I find is, in general, Horus Heresy fans love this game. Okay? Like to the point where they want to understand and see how other factions represent things, and putting them behind a $50 paywall per army it feels like a staggering waste of money when I know that it's going to be invalid in 3 years when you decide to do this all over again. I'm not a fan of that. There doesn't seem to be a digital component in terms of like, they haven't talked about a Horus Heresy app, and with the way detachments work, how on God's green earth are they going to write a program that can help you list build this? I'm sure someone will. There's very smart people in this community. And I'm sure the dedicated folks who do those kinds of things are going to figure it out. But it just feels like it could have been a thing to make onboarding folks really, really easy. I'm unsure of what's going on with Legends at this point. That's my second bad thing. And this isn't, I'm going to be honest with you, I put it down as a bad because I'm seeing a lot of the negativity, but it doesn't affect me personally, at least yet. But essentially, like, what happens to the units that were in Legends before? Are they getting updated War Scrolls for this edition? Because Games Workshop had a way wider model range for some of those older things for Horus Heresy and other just Forge World support stuff that's been phased out over the years. But, I mean, they still worked in Horus Heresy, so, like, where does that leave them? I have no clue. I just know that when people lose access to rules for parts of their collection, I hear the voice of 1,000 nerds crying out like Obi-Wan hearing that Alderaan just blew up. And the last thing I put here for bad is the loss of flavorful restrictions when it comes to army building. Now, restrictions is, you would normally think a loss of restrictions is good, but to me, for example, my collection was based around the Black Reaving specific Rite of War list. That was a very specific one. You had to take a Master of Signals. Justaren were so heavily influenced, it was insane not to take them. I had to have more fast attack than heavy options, so that's why I had 2 Outrider Squadron, or the Javelin bikes, to a unit of last cannon dudes. It was just a very, I felt the restrictions, but the flavor of getting bonus rules for charging in and piling on your enemy was worth it. It made it, I took a detriment to my, combat efficiency in exchange for something that seemed fun. That is all gone. In fact, one of the most disappointing things, as me and Ned were talking about the various army rules for going through the Salamanders and the Night Lords, Sons of Horus, is just when you hit the detachment section, there is no flavor. All they are is just different ways of giving you permission to take the cool toys that you want, which is awesome. It should exist. It's also not like exciting. You should be doing that anyway. To be honest, I think that army building is so flexible, you probably don't need those detachments. Now, I will say that some of them are really good, because if you take certain detachments, you sometimes get more prime slots, which can lead to a lot stronger units or cool synergies or list building. There's reasons for those things. I'm just saying it's just not exciting. Where I used to be like, I want to play Sons of Horus, and you're like, okay, what kinds of Sons of Horus? Do you want to be like the Goody Two-Shoe boys? Do you want to be the Black Raven who comes in on the assault or whatever? Now it's more like looking generally at the model range, like, what do you think sounds cool? Which is, again, it's how you get people to choose a 40k faction. It just doesn't have the same flavorful, I don't know, guardrails, minigame flavor. I don't know, I'm trying to come up with the right word for it, of just having those limits injected a lot of cool creative thinking. Not everybody felt that way. Some people thought the Rights of War were very restrictive. And for them, you're going to love this new edition because it's wide open. For me personally, I actually found it kind of jarring because my collection was so scattered to the wind to accommodate for the fast attack and the heavy choices and the other restrictions that I had in that list. Like when I got this book, I was like, man, I got to really figure out a way to take all these just random units together. And it's possible. You can do it. It's just, it takes a little bit more mental work than it did before. And we're going to pivot lastly to the ugly, okay? So these are things that I just don't agree with in terms of both business practice and also like just asking the question, but why did you need to do that? Like kind of a thing. So top of the list here, Games Workshop seems to be making the move to having profiles that only match the models that they actually sell. And this is an emphasis on like specialty units. The big example here I can give you is I can't remember, I can never get their name right, but the fancy Terminators for the Dark Angels used to have like their like tyrannic greatsword or whatever, and then also have the option to take Thunderhammers. And to my knowledge, that option for Thunderhammers is gone. They removed a rules concession for kit bashing your own models because the official models that they sell all have the fancy swords. Now, if anyone says anything at a local event, shoo them away, because who cares about their opinion? They're clearly the fancy Terminators. The Dark Angels ones. It doesn't actually matter what they're carrying because that war profile matches this model and it doesn't matter. So it has nothing to do with like events or anything like that. It is just a noticeable shift away from the freedom and flexibility of modeling your own army, because that is one of the strengths of Horus Heresy that the other games in the Games Workshop catalog do not have. When you play AOS or you play 40k, your boys have this weapon. Don't like it? Find a new game. Where Heresy was always much more, in the past, I felt like anchored with the historical gamer, which is just make something cool, and then the rules exist to facilitate that. And making something cool included free access to mixing around weapons that we've already established for other units. So why is that gone? I don't know, and I don't like it. The other big ugly thing here, and I'm going to kind of rant on this for a little bit, is the biggest problem I think with this edition is that it does absolutely nothing to grow the player base, which is both a detriment for Games Workshop and us. I know that people always jump in with cool models in a new edition. I love that for you. The sales stuff, though, you can keep the sales spike going longer if you make the game accessible. If we're all getting into it, and it seems like something that even the shy guy at the game store can get into, he might join us. But when it's so thick and cumbersome and so prohibitive to new players joining, I don't expect this edition to last long simply because it's a bad idea. And here's what I mean, okay? They showed us a roadmap of sort of the releases coming for Horus Heresy, and they showed us that in a couple months they're going to release the Zone Mortalis rules. And my question to that is, what executive do I need to slap to get you to understand the 2-player starter set needs to be Zone Mortalis? You bust open the box and you play the game. Like, it is a self-contained thing. You are fighting in the corridors of the ship. I even like the idea of fighting on Istavan 5. But here's the thing. that treachery didn't just happen on the ground. We've visited what happens on the ground 1,000 times in this edition. Having it be when the traitors flipped and hit the loyalists with such violence that they got shattered, that was also happening up in space. Zone Mortalis makes sense here too. Not only would it be a complete format that would allow the starter set of the new edition to be played out of the box as 2 different factions, okay? It would also, of course, be one army if you wanted it to be. And you can just have crappy cardboard, tiles or whatever. It doesn't have to be like Necromunda where you guys put out the big box set with the terrain, which is really cool. But, that obviously drives up the price point. But the point of focusing on Zone Mortalis, it limits the kinds of units that people are going to be bringing. So there's less gotchas as the tank that no one has access to except for this army smashes something. They're smaller scale games, and you can really emphasize the modeling and the kit bashing because having a dude with, say a power sword matters when there's only 30 dudes on the board. Whereas in the vastness of a 3K game, that upgrade doesn't matter. It has to be shrunken down. This little booklet here that has the introductory rules, this covers the smallest iota of what it is to play Horus Heresy. But what if instead it was just 1 or 2 levels of a Zone Mortalis game? Because you could actually teach most of the rules for that because of the limited number of weapons and rules and all this kinds of BS much more simply. It can be a quick start guide. That just doesn't really exist for this game. Game stores can't just have a glass case with 30 to 40 dudes that somebody can just borrow. It's a huge investment to have an army that someone can try out. The first steps into this game are $200 to $300 depending on the Saturnine box, or if you get spare bits from somebody else. At this point, the Saturnine box is pitched as a 2-player box, but it exists to be bought and built as an army, which is good. But also, if you don't support that with the fact that people are going to be buying that as brand new players and make it easy for them to start playing, what's the point? We're not growing our community with this. This doesn't make the game more accessible. We have to buy all new books. There's no app for people to be even able to learn on the go or in their own time. The format gives you the whole box. The Saturnine box is about, I'm going to say 1,600-ish points once you do the most minute amount of upgrades on things. That's great for a starter set for a whole army. It could also be 2 Zone Mortalis lists. Make that the focal point. It leans into the challenges being the center stage because your characters will matter so much more. I don't get it. This game is so big and unapproachable to get new players into that why don't those smaller scale on-ramps, there we go, that's what I'm looking for, exist for it? Because what I see happening now is Games Workshop puts out a new edition. People don't like it because it's different. But because they're not introducing a way to get a fresh player base that thinks, I kind of like this, which I am one of them. I do like it. But without an on-ramp, you're just going to be bleeding people. The people that pay money for these things and keep the game being monetarily valuable or whatever. So you gotta have some on-ramps, bro. And even if they, blow me away with the Zone Mortalis, let's say it's a premium set, they have stuff to make it affordable and accessible, and there's a start playing guide or whatever, I think to myself, why wasn't it with the edition launch? At the height of your marketing, of your enthusiasm, of showing all the coolest models, it just seems dumb. Spearhead was so successful that you did a second season of it, because it's a scaled down version of the thing that we love. So is Zone Mortalis. I spoke to one person who, I won't mention, but they were an employee, and they were like, I wish we had done this with 40K because Combat Patrol isn't the same as Spearhead. They're roughly analogous, but there are some differences when it comes to how you can structure them for competitive play. So you took the lesson. You know in hindsight that would have been better for 40K, and then when the next game edition launches, there's nothing like that. It makes me want to punch myself in the face. And that is what I think is the biggest ugly here, is that it just... New editions, right? If they have to happen for the sake of the financial stability of the game, that refresh of new players in, old players out kind of a thing, that is awesome. As long as it does something to get new players in. And I just don't see it with this set. Now, it's a great value. The Saturnine box is a great value. If you are jumping into Horus Heresy and you want to start this game, you know that you like it, maybe you got a few cool, like, of the specialty troops or something, this will fill you out on every single thing you need for a basic army. All your basic troops, you got a cool hammer unit in the form of the Saturnine Terminators. You know, there's just a lot of great things about it. But the addition and the way it's structured is not conducive to onboarding new players. That has much more to do with marketing than game design. I kind of put the way that you package a product under marketing because that's essentially how you're going to be reaching the people that you're talking to. But like in an alternate reality where they said, hey, listen, this next edition, we're going back to Istvan 5. And we all roll our eyes like we did when we heard that, and you go, but in a way that you've never heard before. We're going to talk about this crazy, elaborate, new set of battles. It's called the Orbital, Hellstorm or something like that. It's when all the different traders did boarding actions all at the same time. And then you had the same hype train that you did for this edition, except now you're promoting all of those awesome Black Library books that were there doing boarding actions. I know Flight of the Eisenstein was actually Istvan 3, but that would be an example of like spacecraft boarding actions, fighting things off your ship. Demons come into the ship on that one. You can write a whole new slew of short stories to support this. Every legion that was there would have their own tales of heroism of stuff going on in the void. You could upsell your Black Library books. It would be a wonderful way to emphasize some of the troops in this box, specifically, all the different TAC Marines that you get, the different models of armor that they would use. Maybe they sent the better stuff down and they kept the Mark IIs up in space because they were like, we're not going to need this. The little booklet you get that instructs you on how to do stuff, instead of just having like a picture of each phase like it does, instead, what if it was a series of, like, say, 3 to 4 missions that was your boarding party arrives, attacker, defender, and 1 or 2 missions. One's in the engine room, one's in the oxygen, whatever, life systems, and the third one is, like, on the bridge or something like that. And it's just different missions with different scenarios to use the models that you got. You'll be learning the game as you go. It'll be much more focused and cohesive because, again, Zone Mortalis. And you get to wildly promote some of the cool products that have what I imagine to be the highest cost to income ratio possible. So like your weapon sprues. Stuff that's like no plastic. I know there's a lot of other costs associated, but those also go into everything else as well. But it's just like one little sprue of plastic for like the lieutenant upgrades. Well, Zone Mortalis zooms in so much that those things matter more. So sell them, dude. Again, you can see I'm getting excited. That's why I started this with, who do I have to slap? I don't want to slap anybody. Nothing but love. It's just I see this opportunity for a game that I personally love. And honestly, in addition, that I really like the change in direction to being this epic civil war of these characters, and we're following them and their challenges matter, and delivering heroes, and you get rewarded for being hyper-aggressive with the Vanguard rule. Like, I love these things. That's all stuff that I'm like, hell yeah, I'm here for that. And then it just sounds like a screeching halt when I consider anyone who doesn't already play trying to jump in. And that was true last edition. I struggled to jump in. That's when I started and completed my Sons of Horus Black Reaving army. But this did nothing to help. Like, specifically that specific scenario. Now, there are things that overall help new players by making things simpler. Removing some war gear or condensing war gear, the damage thing, all that. I love all that. But like, as far as onboarding new people, it didn't do much. So that's my good, bad, and ugly. I will say overall, kind of stepping back from it, getting into this game is the hardest part of this game. But once you're in, actually it makes a lot of sense. The combination of the rules, prompts, like the tips, they're kind of synopses in plain English, exceptionally helpful. The books are well laid out. I have no problem skipping around the different parts of them. They're all the stuff that we come to expect, the great quality of the publishing and the layout design. The models are killer. Like, they're just so detailed. But it is a big departure from what it was before. And I can't say in every regard that it was worth it. If they stuck the landing with making it hyper accessible to new players, I'd be like, this is at least a 9 or an 8 out of 10. Instead, it doesn't feel so much like something I can score that way. It feels like I don't want to say a side grade, but it is a different iteration of what you would think of when someone says to you, space civil war, right? Like, it's just a different version of that. It feels like Horus Heresy. There's still a lot, you know, the Primarchs and that kind of stuff. How they include them is much more clarified. It's very fluid. I like it. But I don't know, it is a notable design direction. And so people are going to leave the game. Off-ramping is just part of every new edition. They know it. They understand it. It is what it is. Because some people are like, well, I like that wide angle, you know, battlefield shot. I might just pivot to Adeptus Titanicus, or whatever they call it now. The bigger scale game with Titans and stuff like that, or pivot to a completely different game system or company altogether. The point being here is, like, people are just not gonna like that, but for some folks like me, I like it quite a bit. Challenging people to fisticuffs has been a part of my Warhammer history for forever. So anyway, I've ranted on long enough. I wanted to make this video mainly because, like, I want to be very transparent, both with my, you know, motivations. I have the stuff, both to be transparent about. GamesWorkshop sent it to me. Thanks, guys. But also to come out and say, like, I know more of what I'm talking about than maybe some folks just ranting on Reddit. And with that information, I just wanted to have a casual chat about things I liked and didn't like. Most of the stuff I don't like about this edition has to do with the way that the corporate entity that is Games Workshop compiled and marketed the product. And I have fewer, but still some gripes. Like, the bad section is more when I was complaining about downsizing stuff to match the model line. I don't know. But as far as the actual rules go, I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So if you are looking for a place to hear some Horus Heresy news, I plan on talking about this quite a bit this coming year. Stay tuned, click subscribe. This is a place where I talk about things that I love, like I said before, and I will continue to do so. And I like Horus Heresy. If you don't anymore, that's cool. Life's too short. Go find something you love. Even if it's just playing the last edition, there's a group not too far from me that they're just like, yeah, you know what? No one's in a rush to buy the new books. We're a small starting up group. We're just going to keep playing second, and I commend that. Do what you love. But if you want a place to hang out, paint your models, and have a little bit of positivity regarding all the different legions and stuff like that, click subscribe and hang out with me, and I will catch you all in my next video. Happy wargaming, friends!